over to the Milford Town Line, which is over near Camp Street in the Mill River. So just give you a little summary of the project before I show some maps here. But essentially, within the town of Upton, the project is going to entail replacement of 50 existing transmission structures. The bulk of those are wood H-frame structures. That means two legs holding up the wires. Um, as Mary mentioned, also parts of the project are replacement of some of the wires, the overhead wires. Actually, the addition of OPGW, we call it, which is optical ground wire. It's a fiber optic communications wire, and then maintenance of some of the existing access roads, gravel access roads that run through the right of way. Just a few other notes to share. The project does qualify for consideration as a limited project, though we feel that we do meet the performance standards. Um, 21 of the 50 structures in town are located within areas that are subject to protection, either under the Wetlands Protection Act or under Upton's bylaw. 19 of those, the structures themselves qualify as exempt maintenance. Essentially, the Wetlands Protection Act provides an exemption for the in-kind replacement of those structures. Two structures do not meet the exemption because the engineering requirements for those necessitate an increase of the foundation size for those structures. I'll get into more of that in a little while. So those two structures are really the focus of this NOI, along with one area of a work pad at one of the structures that is in the buffer zone, the outer buffer zone to a potential vernal pool. So that's under the bylaw for town, and I'll cover that as well. Portions of the project, a small portion of it does fall within natural heritage mapped habitat. We have received our determination from Natural Heritage indicating that the project is not anticipated to result in a take of rare species. Part of the best management practices that are going to help us avoid a take are timing of mat placement, so we're avoiding turtle nesting times. And I think lastly, on the kind of summary here is that abutters were notified in accordance with the bylaw, and there were, abutters basically essentially were the two parcels where the work was proposed. That's going to be jurisdictional. So to get into it a little bit further here, those two structures, 529 and 552, essentially right now they consist of three-pole wooden structures. They're going to be replaced with steel H-frames on foundations. So one pole will be eliminated, but again, the foundation size will be a little bit larger than what's out there right now. And I'm going to just share the maps now if I'm allowed to do that, so you can see what we're talking about.
And while we're waiting, can people sign in who are guests at a meeting?
Great.
All signed the attendance. Thank you.
Okay. So as I mentioned here, the project extends from the Grafton line to the Milford Town Line here. So right across the center of town. The right of way that this line runs through actually has three other circuits along with it. So this is one of four running through there. And I'm just going to jump to the pages where you can see, unless you'd like me to go through page by page, I can walk you through the entire project, or if you'd like me to jump to the structures that are jurisdictional, I can head there. Any preference?
That'd be good.
Jurisdictional.
Jurisdictional? Okay, great. All right, so then we are going to head to sheet 63. So the first one here is structure 529. We do have photos in the NOI. I can get to that if you'd like to see those, but this is off of Gore Road, which is a sort of a gravel road off of Hopkinton here. So again, the existing structure indicated by this gray dot here consists of three wooden poles that are roughly 18 inches in diameter. That's going to be replaced slightly to the west with a two pole, again, an H-frame structure. Essentially right now, the existing three pole structure occupies about 21 square feet. It's going to be replaced, as I mentioned, with an H-frame on 7-foot diameter foundations. So that's about a 77 square foot footprint for the new structure. the mitigation for the loss of BBW that's going to occur by the structure replacement there is going to be partly by restoring in situ the footprint of the existing structure, that 21 square feet of the poles coming out. And then we've also proposed, you can see this little purple triangle over there, to mitigate by creating a BBW replication area. It's 200 square feet to actually overcompensate for not only this structure, but the other structure that I'll flip to in a moment here, which is essentially the same exact thing, where it's a 3-pole structure that is going to be replaced on an H-frame with 7-foot foundations. So I can jump to that other one here, which is on sheet 70. So the other structure that is jurisdictional and falls within BVW is structure 552, and I've got the cursor hovering over now. This is accessed via an off right of way gravel road off of a cul-de-sac at the end of Camp Street. And you can see here we've got the Mill River flowing through. So this structure is again the existing in gray here, and the proposed in orange. Is within BVW associated with the Mill River. It's also falls within the riverfront area associated with the Mill River. So same thing here, where we have the 3-pole structure being replaced with a 2-pole structure. Larger foundations necessitate the order of conditions here. And what we're proposing is, if back at that page I was just on there, again, the impact 77 square feet is partly mitigated by the removal, 21 square feet being restored in situ, and then that delta of 56 square feet at both of these structures. So that is a total of 102 for the 2 structures. We're proposing to mitigate back at the other page there, which I can jump back to if you like, with that 200 square foot replication area. The reason why we're proposing to do it at the other location rather than do 2 separate replication areas is twofold. One, because larger replication areas are just a little bit easier to track. They're generally more successful, I mean, when they're reasonably sized. And also this this location here is a little bit difficult due to topography. I'm not sure if anybody has been out here. There's some hiking trails and whatnot, but it didn't really lend itself to a replication area, whereas the other location at structure 529 was a lot more gentle slope. There's a stream running nearby that provides hydrology to the wetland. And I'll flip back to that sheet so you can just see kind of that notch there, where we're proposing to put the replication area. So both of the structures, BVW mitigation is proposed here at this location. The NOI does include a planting plan, which I can flip to if you'd like to see that, and it also lays out the proposed monitoring and reporting that'll go along with that for not less than a 2-year period, to make sure that this does reach that 75% hydrophytic vegetation requirement. So that, I think, covers it for the BVW locations, and I'll pause for questions if anybody has any before I go to the other location, which is in the buffer zone to the vernal pool.
Do we have any questions?
Wait, I'm curious, will you do the replication about the same time you do the pole work? It's pretty much at the same time?
Yeah, I would envision that, as you can see here, I can zoom in a little bit more here. A portion of this little notch in the wetland is overlapped by what you're seeing here for the line, or the symbology indicates timber mats, which anywhere where we're doing work in wetlands, we're proposing to use timber mats, which are, minimize the ground compaction and rutting and things like that. So once the structures are replaced and the mats come out, we'll likely access from the upland. There's a solid access road here, so access from this point here, and yeah, just to make sure that there's no disturbance of the replication area from the actual construction, we would likely do it afterwards. And to the best of our abilities, which I think should be achievable, since there is decent access through here, we'll try to time that at a time of year where it's conducive to the planting and whatnot.
Mary, do you have other questions or comments?
I was just noticing that you say there's gonna be a construction monitor, you know, looking at taking care of erosion controls and stuff. Will that monitor be doing reports? And if so, will those be submitted to the board as well?
So the project is going to require coverage under EPA's construction general permit, the entire project. So just to back up here, the project runs all the way from Millbury to essentially the Medway town line. So there are several other towns involved. So due to the size of the project, it does require coverage under the construction general permit. And that necessitates development of a stormwater protection plan, which essentially identifies all of the sensitive areas that need protection and lays out the types of BMPs that are appropriate for the type of work that we're doing out here, and also mandates training of all the folks that are going to be working on the project so they understand what the constraints are, what the requirements are, and also regular inspections that'll be conducted by Epsilon. So those inspections will be weekly at a minimum during active construction and are also triggered if there is a greater than a quarter-inch rain event. So each one of those inspections, each time that we go out there, we will be looking at any areas where there's active construction or any other areas that need some additional attention due to steep slopes that have been restored, and we're keeping an eye on them. And we generate a report from our inspections, and those are typically just required to be maintained internally. But I don't think that I don't expect that Laura here, who's on the call, would be opposed to providing them to the town, but I will let her speak up if she's able. I'm not sure if she's a panelist.
I think I am, but I don't know how to sign in, so,
We can hear you.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, we do produce the NIPD's reports and submit them, so we can just CC you, when those are compiled.
Yeah, and in a lot of cases, on these types of projects, we'll provide them to the commission on like a monthly basis, so you get kind of a few of them together. And certainly, if there was anything that that looked like an issue as far as compliance, that would be something that we would get in touch with you sooner on. Any other questions before I flip to the other location where we've got the work in the vernal pool buffer?
Yeah, I have a question and a kind of a request. The question is, first, is there a work area near Warren Brook off of Mechanic Street?
Yes. Let me jump there.
That's, yeah, if you could maybe jump to that, that's wood turtle habitat, and I'm just wondering
Correct.
if you're be sweeping the work areas for wood turtle if the work's done.
Yep,
Right.
as you can actually, I'll jump to the previous page. You can see this the orange and yellow cross hatching that fill, basically it's to the east of Mechanic Street here. That indicates we're in rare species habitat, and you're correct that it is the rare turtle. So as you can see, these are, these plans that we're looking at here will get developed further into proper construction plans that'll be provided to a contractor, but we've started to include some of the notes that are based on the requirements, the conditions of our coordination with Natural Heritage. So you can see in the corner here, we've got the note about the turtle sweeps needed. That's, whenever there's active construction or ground disturbance, placement of mats, etc. And also at the next structure that you've got here, while we were doing our surveys of the line, our biologist did identify that there were patches of viable nesting habitat as well here. So through our discussions with Natural Heritage, we worked it out essentially that they would like us to place the mats prior to the start of the nesting season. And the reason for that is essentially if we have the mats down before the turtles start attempting to nest, then they will essentially find other areas. It could be close by, but they won't nest in the footprint of our work. Whereas if we place the mat, because once they create a nest, they do a decent job of disguising it, or it gets grown up with vegetation. If we were to put the mats down into their nesting season, rather, we might inadvertently have impact a nest here. So that's the reason why we're putting them down ahead of time. But yep, that was all part of the discussion with Natural Heritage and reflected in our determination that we received from them.
Yeah, thank you. And the request is, I know Upton's assessor is looking for information about wetlands, wetland mapping. I'm just curious, do you folks have a shape file, showing your wetland delineations that you could share with, the assessor? Just for future reference, she might find that useful. The commission might too.
I'm going to defer to Laura on that.
Yeah, I'd have to get approval for that. So we can get back to you.
Okay, thank you, yeah. Just a GIS shape file would be
Yeah.
great, if it's possible.
And I
Thank
assume we would coordinate through the agent for that.
you. Yes,
Okay, no problem.
thank you.
Any other questions before I hop to the potential vernal pool buffer zone location?
We'll go right ahead.
All right, hearing none. Let's see if I can get it on the first shot. I'm gonna say this sheet. Oh, I got it. All right. So structure 548, as you can see here. If you're able to make them out, these black lines here that I'm hovering over indicate a 10-foot interval contour. So if you can see them, you can see that over the area of this work pad here for this structure placement, there's better than a 30-foot slope. So wherever possible, you know, the New England Power really tries to minimize disturbance, especially in proximity to sensitive areas. But there are some instances like this one here where it's just pretty infeasible to create a safe level working platform for the types of machinery that does this work. So what we're proposing here is essentially to do the grading that is needed to create a level work pad. And in reality, this may, because of the slope, this may look like 2 levels. So that it may basically be an upper or a lower tier to this work pad. And as you can see, wetland U22 up here on the northern edge of the power line right of way. The yellow asterisk indicates that it is noted as a potential vernal pool. Per the bylaw, doesn't really distinguish between certified and potential. So we added the 100-foot buffer, which is beyond the 100-foot buffer to the wetland. Just we made the assumption that the depression goes all the way to the wetland edge. So what that does is pushes this corner of the work pad here into that locally regulated vernal pool buffer. So what we're proposing is the roughly 1,200 and change square feet of work pad that's going to fall within the vernal pool buffer would be restored post project. I think realistically, because it's always beneficial to the power companies to have some remnant work pad so that if there is an emergency, if there's storm damage or some other issue that requires a response, to be able to maintain access or at least be able to, you know, get the vehicles they need to the work site here. So ideally, I think maintaining the strip of gravel that would provide access to what's going to remain outside of the vernal pool buffer would be what we'd be going for. But the bulk of what you're going to see inside of the vernal pool buffer would be restored. So that would mean replacement of the topsoil that's bladed off from the site here. Typically that has enough of a seed bank in it that it'll come back on its own, but it would definitely involve us making sure that it's stable, installing the appropriate erosion sedimentation controls, and at least mulching with straw, if not adding some seed to get it to pop. This is, you know, across the existing access road from the vernal pool. So there's some existing gravel in between, but we would propose to restore that just to, you know, minimize the permanent impact to the vernal pool buffer. What else? I think that that pretty much wraps up the highlights of what I was hoping to get through tonight. I think we've not received a DEP file number yet for the project, so we need to continue tonight. And speaking with Mary, I think she's still looking to do a site visit out there. And I know Mary said you typically go on your own. If you'd like company to explain anything, happy to join you out there. But So I think that's all I've got for now. And Laura, I'll flip it to you unless you want to add anything here.
Nope, just thank you for your time tonight.
Do you have any questions from the commission or the audience? Hearing none, we should continue.
Wait, I
Sorry,
do
Chris.
have a question. Now, I acknowledge that this may not be the right venue for this, but as long as we're talking. The site on the Mill River,
Yes.
there is the remnant of an old mill in that location. And I remember they did work there before, and there was some comment about protecting historic resources. And it got really close to the mill site. And I think they may have dislodged the stone, but. So I would hope they would. At least take as much care as they did, if not a little bit more. At there, then there's also an old bridge on the trail there, which is probably, that trail is probably the old road to the mill. And the bridge itself is probably from the 1800s. And the foundation, the other thing is just so you know, that road is kind of washed out in places because of beaver activity.
Yep, I've observed that myself. And yep, there certainly is beaver activity out there. And I can say, yeah, this is essentially looks like an old mill pond here. So I hear what you're saying. New England Power does have a cultural resources specialist on the project team. That certainly was evaluated as far as the entire line for protection of cultural resources. So I think there are other locations where there are specific measures called out. I think at this location, essentially the matting that we're going to be placing does serve as the best management practice. So noted as far as the presence of the old. I actually, when I was out there myself, it did seem like there was sort of an old waterway or something that had since been grown over, and there wasn't water flowing through it here. But noted. I think
And one other thing I just learned is the town just had all of their culverts evaluated.
Okay.
And the team did discover that there is a culvert under Gore Road between the house and the entrance to the state forest that was in pretty bad shape. Which I brought to the attention of DCR because I believe it's on DCR property. Or if it's not on DCR property, it's important to DCR because that's how they get into the forest. I actually think it's on the land that's owned by Two Gore.
Okay. Oh, right here, actually. So yeah, if you can see these orange dots here, that indicates that there is a culvert present there. Is that maybe the one you're thinking of?
I know it goes under the old Gore Road, so it would be the dirt road there.
Yeah, and then this stream drains down to Center Brook here. So that I will say is beyond the limits of our work here. Just so you know, what you're seeing here in orange, this is another location where New England Power's cultural resources professional identified that there was some sensitivity to the area. So this is one reason why this is matted, but also the orange here is exclusion fencing. It's essentially like plastic snow fence that'll be put up to make sure that we stay within the prescribed footprint here. But there's no need for us to go further up Gore Road, so I don't envision that being an impact or anything we need to.
Right. That's it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Now we need to find a time to continue your hearing. So Mary, what's a good time on the 9th?
I think it could be at 7 o'clock.
Okay. So we have to take a vote to continue the hearing till 7 o'clock on July 9th. Do you hear a motion?
Okay.
Okay, let's do a voice vote. Chris, aye.
Tom, I, Alan, I. Micah.
Sandy, aye.
Marcella, I.
Okay, it's unanimous vote of the commission to continue your hearing until 7 o'clock on the 9th.
Great. Thank you all very much, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Now, before we go into our next hearing, I have one statement to make. Regarding the previous filing. Basically, the incorrect notification does not affect the wetland. It already is a wetland, so we need to protect it anyway. And we want to make this right. And the area in question is a wetland restricted by the Upton bylaw, which went into effect in 2004. And the incorrect filing in question needs to be closed out, and the wetland time line not be confirmed. And then a new filing, which we'll hear tonight, will be a determination of applicability to confirm the wetland line. And we also can discuss whether to waive the bylaw considerations and the filing fee. So I just want to make that statement before we got started, because our next hearing is at 7:20, a request for a determination of applicability for 41 Milford Street and right away between 12 and 45 Milford Street, and have Upton installation of a new water line, sanitary sewer, and construction of a driveway and pump station. So Mary, do you have the official filing?
Yeah, so I'll read public hearing notice. Notice is hereby given in accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act that the Upton Conservation Commission will hold the following public meeting on Wednesday, June 25th, 2025 at 7:20 p.m. RDA filed by the Upton Department of Public Works for the installation of a new water main, sanitary sewer, and construction of a driveway to access the proposed pump station located at 41 Milford Street and the right of way between 12 and 45 Milford Street.
Excellent. So, because it's a request for determination, there are no green cards for that. So do we have someone for the applicant to speak to this?
Yes, I'll start. I'm Rick Canavan. I'm a wetland scientist with Ty and Bond. Emily Church, an engineer with Ty and Bond, is also with me. We're from our Worcester office. Just to follow up on what you started with, we did actually notice, so I do have scans of green cards that I could email Mary. Part of the issue with the previous submittal was an issue with notifications, so we wanted to just make sure we re-noticed on this, so we did send out notices, and I've got copies of the receipts and green cards so I can get the commission. Getting into the application, you kind of started, but there was previously a order of conditions issued for this work, which the town and Holbrook builders have been working together to rescind. That's been happening. Believe it's complete today, as you mentioned, and this application is being submitted as an RDA to re-permit the project. That's a water line, sewer line, pump station, and I'll defer to Emily on the questions on the content of what the construction is, but just to give some Wetlands Protection Act and bylaw context, the utility lines from the Wetlands Protection side of the project, there are utility lines being installed in buffer zone to BBW and Bank. Those are in roadway and do meet exemptions in the Wetlands Protection Act regulations for specifically for the installation of utilities and roadways. That's really the limit of work that's WPA regulated, so all the work under the state regulations meets that exemption. And then for the bylaw, that doesn't include that same exemption for utilities in roadways. And then another issue, which I think we'll discuss more, is that we had identified an isolated vegetated wetland at 41 Milford Street. Part of the pump station driveway is within 100 feet of that isolated wetland. Part of what we're here to do tonight is to not like remove that delineation from the record. So in our application, we're requesting that the commission not determine the boundaries. And we've provided the boundaries as an approximation based on our best understanding to show that we're avoiding as to the maximum extent practical, both, you know, we're completely outside of any wetlands, isolated wetlands, bank, land underwater, like all actual resources we're out of, and we're just in the outer 10 feet of the local 100-foot bylaw to an isolated wetland for the driveway at the pump station. So sure we can have some more discussion, but I think that's hopefully a description of where we're at with this RDA application. I can turn it over to Emily and then the commission to see how much you want to get into also the details of the project itself.
Emily, go ahead.
I can just speak to the construction. So the construction is ongoing right now. If anybody's been up in the area, it's the contractor is installing sewer work right now. All work is within the roadway. They have all their erosion controls installed, you know, per the original order of conditions. I know Mary, you did a site visit of that, and as far as we know, everybody's in compliance with everything. The contractor is, you know, they are continuing work. You know, if anybody has any further questions about the current state of the construction, please let us know.
Thank you. Mary, what are your comments?
You know, we reviewed this more extensively when it was, you know, first submitted as an NOI, and so my recommendation is just to issue a negative determination. And as suggestion, we're not seeking to confirm the wetland boundaries on 41 Milford Street. With that, you know, we just recommend issuing that that the positive 2B that the boundaries are not confirmed, as well as a negative determination that it will not impact the resource areas.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission or members of the audience? Just tell us your name and then your question.
Okay, yeah, you reckon? Okay, very good. Good evening, I'm Matthew Watsky. I'm here as counsel for Hollowbrook, the owner of the property at 41 Milford Street. I believe online there's attorney Don Nagel who handled the litigation to challenge the improperly filed notice of intent that led to the order of conditions. I have with me Sophie Estelle from Goddard Consulting. She's our wetlands consultant. And to my right is Mark Wambolt, the owner of Hollowbrook. So I'm going to make a presentation that first identifies the problem for you, the facts and the law that support our position about the problem, and then my conclusion and request for how the commission can solve the problem. So as you're already aware, the order of conditions was issued, and I think no real fault by the commission. It was an improperly filed notice of intent by Time Bond on behalf of the DPW, where they didn't get the signature of the property owner, because Hollowbrook owned all of the property at the time when that notice of intent was filed. The town had not recorded its notice of taking of the 75 by 75 foot parcel. And Time Bond also erred in failing to give Hollowbrook notice of the notice of intent as an abutter, which they're an abutter to the road. So that's been challenged, and your town council has informed me that agreement for judgment has been filed with the court today that will result in effectively rescinding and making that order of conditions null and void. So solve the problem. What's the problem with the request for determination now? The problem is that we have a site that this commission decided not once but twice, once in 2006 and once in 2007, did not have the isolated vegetated wetland that Time Bond is now identifying and telling you that you should determine it's an isolated vegetated. So you have a decision that the commission made that was based on the conditions that were carefully observed at that time with soil profiles that were taken by David Burke, a wetlands consultant who made the presentation to the commission, identifying 24 inches deep of upland soils in the area that Time Bond is now identifying improperly as an isolated vegetated wetland. The commission's decisions back in 2006 and 2007 approved work to proceed. There is some buffer zone on the property that made the work that was proposed back then subject to review. You actually issued a negative determination of applicability for the project that was originally proposed, and then there was the subsequent order of conditions issued for some additional work that involved construction of a wall. So the negative determination was issued and work proceeded. It didn't actually result in construction of a building, but the work proceeded, and the natural topsoils, the 24 inches of upland soils, were excavated out of the area in the front of the property that was going to be then constructed. A parking lot and driveways would be constructed there, and those topsoils were stockpiled and stored on the property. Those stockpiled topsoils are still there. So what's our problem? Started getting into the facts and the law, but the problem is that the notice of intent plan that Time Bond has submitted to you and is asking for approval, although they took off the designation of isolated vegetated wetlands subject to local jurisdiction, they left on 100-foot buffer zones measured from what they had previously determined were the boundaries to that improperly identified isolated vegetated wetland. So if you approve the project the way they're suggesting, you will be effectively determining that there is buffer zone on this property because you'll be referencing that plan, and that buffer zone is related to this isolated vegetated wetland that Time Bond has identified improperly in an area that you previously identified was uplands. And that's something that Hollowbrook can't allow to happen. So that's the problem. So that if you issue the decision the way Time Bond has presented it to you, where they're not asking you to identify the actual boundaries or identify the type of wetland, but they're giving you buffer zones and saying there's something there, but we're giving you buffer zone. Even the person with the slightest familiarity with how to read a plan would know very easily how to measure 100 feet from a buffer zone line and say, okay, well, that's where Time Bond is saying there's a wetland. So that creates a problem because that determination would be valid for the 3 years that it's in effect. Effectively putting Hollowbrook in a position, if it doesn't appeal that or challenge it and have you change this potential decision that Time Bond's asking you, not, if you don't agree with it, that's fine. But if you were to agree with Time Bond and Hollowbrook didn't appeal, you would have a binding decision by the commission in that determination of applicability that there's a resource area there, when there had never been a resource area there before. So let's talk about the facts and the law. So the facts are you have the property having been thoroughly assessed back in 2006, 2007, and the commission having agreed that there's 24 inches of upland soils. You had work commencing, stripping away those upland soils, so it's an altered, it's a disturbed site. And then to compound things, you have a Mass DOT catch basin that was designed to catch all of the stormwater coming off of the highway there that has failed. And so instead of having the water from the highway, the stormwater from the highway going into the catch basin and being directed away from this property, the water from the highway is flowing into the property. And I don't know if you have the PDF of the filing that Goddard sent to you. If you could put that up, Sophie can go up to the screen and could show which photos are in that report that can show you where the channel is that's coming off of the highway, that's eroded, going right past the catch basin, and into this artificially created low area. I'll continue though. When you get it up, I can have Sophie sort of back up and show you some of the features. So what you have is a man-made condition, an artificial condition that under DEP's wetlands delineation manual, when you're looking at a site that's altered, you don't look at the conditions as they exist right now. You determine what was it like before it was altered. So for example, if you had a site where somebody brought in 2 feet of fill material and laid it out on top of the wetlands and they said, you know, ta-da, there's no wetlands, what would you do? You would say, we need to take soil samples to go through the fill material and look to see what the natural soils were underneath it. And then we'll determine whether it's wetlands based on those natural soils. What would DEP do under the wetlands delineation manual with a site where the material has been excavated away and stored? You wouldn't look at what Sophie has identified, and in the report that she submitted, it's June 24th, you wouldn't look at the sea horizon soils. That's the subgrade soils, which is the only soil that's existing in that excavated area now. You wouldn't look at the sea soils and say, well, do those sea soils evidence any kind of hydric conditions? And do you have water at the surface or near the surface of the excavated remaining surface? No. You say, what was it like beforehand? Well, we have a wonderful situation here where you have upland soils, they're stockpiled and stored on site. So if you wanted to, you could go look at them. Or you could look at the 2006 report that was filed to the commission with the request for determination in 2000 that they issued in 2007, report by David Burke, a wetlands resource specialist with engineering design consultants. And he gave you the very clear documentation of what was there before the soils were excavated. It was 24 inches of upland soil. So there's no basis under the facts or under the regulatory standards to determine that this area is an isolated vegetated wetland. It's a man-made artifact of construction having started, removing the natural materials that were there, stockpiling them, and we can look at it you're probably familiar with the 3-part test that DEP and EPA use for determining something wetlands. This question, do you have vegetation, do you have soils, and do you have hydrology? And under DEP's test, you need 2 out of the 3. You don't have 2 out of the 3 here. Stein Bond said, well, we looked at it and we believe that there was vegetation, but you don't have the soils because all that's there in the area they've identified as isolated vegetated wetland is sea horizon soils. That's what's left after the natural soils. Upland soils have been excavated. And you don't have hydrology because the only source of water is the stormwater coming off of the highway that's flowing past their failed catch basin that Mass DOT has already contacted us to say, we realize it's failed. Here's a design for us to go in and completely replace it so that we capture the water and direct property because it doesn't belong in here. So you don't have the basic characteristics that would be necessary to determine the area as wet. What do I suggest as the solution? I think what you should do is the solution. There are 2 ways to deal with it. It's called the simple way and then the less simple way. The simple way would be to direct Time Bond to erase the buffer zone lines so that there's no buffer zone to a non-existent IDW on the property, and resubmit that plan to you. And then you can go ahead with issuance of a negative determination that confirms all of the wetlands boundaries and determines that the work that's proposed within buffer zones that are shown on the plan will not require the filing of a permit. And in that way, you have established that there's no isolated vegetated wetland on this property in an area where in the past it was unpleasant. That's the simple way, just have a change in the plan and issue the standard negative determination. I think it's a -4. Wetlands areas are accurate and there's no impact that requires an order of condition. The less simple way would be to write into the or negative determination or of a narrative, and there's room on the form to write out a narrative, and you have to write out a narrative that explains those buffer zone lines to the non-existing IVW, we're not approving those and we determined that's not a regulated resource area. So that's our presentation. If you would find it helpful, glad to have Sophie sort of walk you through. I understand that her report was distributed to all of you. You may not have had an opportunity to read it. If it's not something that you can display on the screen, okay, you can display it on the screen. So why don't I ask you, so Sophie, first, could you explain to the commission what you did to establish that the time period within which work happened, the first step? So, and I think there's a photo up there.
Yeah, absolutely. So this picture,
You can go ahead and walk
Yeah.
up to it, because there are gonna be some things you're gonna need to show them.
absolutely. So this photo is a pictometry of 41 Milford Street in 2008. This was after the negative determination of applicability and order of conditions was filed that allowed for the grading of the topsoil and subsoil on site. As you can see here, there's no evidence of wetland contours or areas on site after the clearing after 2008. Could you scroll down a bit?
And this, as I understand it, is a picture of where the failed catch basin is. Can you just sort of
Yes.
elaborate on
So the area circled here is the location of the double catch basin that was failed. We went to the site in April and examined the area where the catch basin was. It was completely covered in sediment and vegetation. And obviously, if it's covered in sediment and vegetation, it's difficult for water to enter the catch basin and properly function.
it? Did we have an unusually wet spring this spring when these observations were made?
We did, yes.
Take a look at the next page. There's, I believe, some sort of scouring. What are we looking at here?
Yes, so this drainage pattern is going towards the failed catch basin, but unfortunately with the sediment over the catch basin, it's unable to capture that runoff that's coming off the highway. And it's directing it onto the site, causing increased hydric components onto the site.
And that's where the water's coming off of the highway and flowing towards the site?
Yes,
Okay. Tell me, is there any other source of water coming into this property?
no,
Mary, do you have the time bond plan that was submitted with the request for determination that you could display?
I do have it handy, Mary, if you would like me to share.
You're probably more familiar with it than I am.
Sure. All right, is everybody able to see this? All right, so yeah, so this is the area in question that we've been discussing. This is the 41 Milford Street parcel.
So there's one sheet that still shows buffer zone lines on it. Could you turn to that sheet, please?
It's this one right there.
This is the sheet.
The sheet, Sophie, can you pull? I'm sorry, it's not clear. May I approach it? Just
Sure, sure.
I could do you one better. I could highlight if that makes it easier for everybody to see.
Thank you.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
All right, so there are 3 places on this plan where they're showing buffer zone to the isolated area that Time Bond is identified in here. So there's this piece of buffer that's drawn in that would be buffer only to this location. there's a little piece of buffer on the opposite side of the street that's could be buffer only to this area. And there's, you see, here's an interesting sort of a, I don't know, like an arrowhead shape that has two buffer zones. It's buffer zone to an offsite wetland, this piece of it. And then this arc would be buffer zone to what they've identified here in the on 41 Milford. So our suggestion is that you direct Ty and Bond to remove these three sections showing buffer zone and then determine that there's no IBW. Any technical questions for Sophie to respond to?
Mary, do you have any questions?
I did not do a thorough review of their report since the timing, but I did not see any pictures of the test pits that were dug. How deep were the pits, and were they dug with just an auger or were they dug with equipment?
They were dug with an auger, so the first test pit was from 0 to 12 inches. There was restricted rock below that, which could also be an indicator of the sea horizon profile as well. For test pit 2, it was from 0 to 20 inches. And then for test pit 3, it was from 0 to 24 inches.
Not to quibble too much, but auger holes and test pits are different. Somewhat misleading, test pits, if that's, he did really good augers. I also had a question, and again, we just got this letter. And I didn't really have a chance to completely review it, and there's a couple places in there that it says something like that the commission authorized removal of silt. We, issued a order condition for this property way back, but we didn't authorize fill removal. So I don't.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I quite heard the last part of the comment.
In the letter from Goddard, maybe you could find that and actually read that section. If I recall, it says something about the commission authorizing removal of fill. And I don't understand how we did that.
So I'll address it. So the commission issued a negative determination in 2007 that validated the where resource areas were, and the work that proceeded in removing the material occurred during the time period that negative determination was in effect and valid. That was the commencement of the construction of the commercial property there.
Okay, I understand that, but I think the way it's written is misleading.
Okay, well, that
I mean,
was the intention.
Yes. I mean, can you read that?
Sure. The Upton Conservation Commission issued an order of conditions on September 18th, 2007. DEP file number 311-0604, approving the work.
That was relating to the construction of a retaining wall that was in the 100-foot buffer zone. The negative determination for the construction of the remainder of the site is addressed in the private paragraph.
Mayor, do you have a hard? Maybe we can move on, but Mayor, do you have a hard copy of the letters?
I have.
I can find one. Sorry, but maybe you can move on.
I can read that section right now.
If you know where it is.
Yeah.
I think there's two places.
So it says Hollybrook Builders LLC was issued a negative determination of applicability on December 28, 2006 by the Upton Conservation Commission. It's the following paragraph. On November 8th, 2006, Peter Burmis of Engineering Design Consultants filed an RDA on behalf of Hollybrook Builders for the development of a retail center, associated parking lot, and an infiltrated stormwater system with associated grading. So subsequent to the 2006 negative determination of applicability, Hollybrook Builders also cleared the permitted area and removed and stockpiled the upland topsoils for future use. The topsoil stockpile remains on the property.
Just a few notes. History of the property. Back when this development was permitted in 2006, 2007, there was a fair bit of opposition from the neighbors, if you remember. In fact, I think about 40 of them signed and appealed, which didn't end up going anywhere. I don't see the neighbors tonight. I'm not sure that they know what is going on, so I don't think we can really make a decision about the wetland resource areas there when they're not involved in the conversation. They, at the time, there was wetland plants still at the time before any topsoil was removed. There was not, again, the consultant did not find it, so I believe it's a little premature to make that decision tonight as to remove the wetland line. As we know, a request for determination is basically looking at, will this project impact the wetlands? We know that the way the project is permitted, it's not going to impact the wetlands. So I think that's, in my opinion, that's what the board is considering tonight. The Hollowbrook Builders, if they want to look at whether or not there's resources on the property, they can come with their own INRAD or request for determination at a future date. They can come, it's not going to be the same project as it was in 2006 because the pump station is going to be on the property. I'm sure the commission would like to see, what are your plans for the property? It's not gonna look the same. Even at the time, I know the neighbors had pictures of flooding, if that, pipe has been flooded for the last 20 years. I think there were issues at the time and the issues are still present that I think we need to have more people involved.
This is Chris. I think one thing is that lot has pine trees on it, tons of them. I don't think pine trees tend to live in what area.
Right, and Chris, if you look at the aerials over time, it's interesting to watch how that lot grew in, because I looked at them, every single one from 2015, and the pine trees grew up in the upland area, and there were no pine trees growing in the middle portion, which was what Ty and Bond found as wetland.
There is actually a white pine that's in the center of the eastern area, right in the middle of it as well.
Yep.
Okay, just back to my
Sure.
observation, that's all it is really. There's a couple places where in your letter where it says. Permitted removal of topsoil and subsoil. And I just kind of, I'm sure I dispute it, but I question that the commission ever actually permitted removal of topsoil and subsoil on the site. I think there's a couple places you say that in this letter.
Sure, absolutely. So with the,
So, why do you say that then?
for the,
Just if you could point us to the specific language, sir.
Yeah, well. Right here. That's paragraph after figure 3. It's another place too, I noticed, prior to the permitted removal of topsoil and subsoil. So it's,
Well, so if I may, the chair, if we make the commission feel better, we can modify that to say, prior to proceeding with the permitted project. So the permitted project showed the commercial project that was approved.
Yeah, because I understand Mike's concern the way it's written. I understand what you meant. You meant that moving of the topsoil was a permitted activity, but not that the Conservation Commission permitted that exact task. So,
Yeah, I was, when you build a parking lot, you have to strip away
Yeah.
topsoils before you can build your parking lot. And so Sophie wrote it saying that removing the topsoil was a permitted activity. Effectively, it was, but you're right, there wasn't an application saying, can we remove topsoil? It was an application saying, can we build this project? And it was approved. So we're happy to modify the letter to deal with that nuance, if you wish, that's fine.
I agree. Thank you.
And I guess another comment about, native topsoil. This land has been altered many, many times in the past, because there was an old map from like 1900 showing it as a pond. So I think there may have been some fill at that time. It's a many layered history of what's going on. So there's a lot going on here.
Yeah, I think that the report that was filed by I'm sorry, what's his name, David Burke. Identified it as a site that likely had been in agricultural use for many decades. And so there was apparently evidence of material having been brought in and the site then farmed. But all of that would have happened before there was such a thing as a Wetlands Protection Act or local wetlands bylaw. So we deal with it in the condition that it was when it was put into effect.
I agree with Mary's comment about the neighbors, because before we had lots of neighbors who were very interested in the project. So I'm not sure if they're aware of what is going on right now.
Didn't they send green cards even though they didn't need to?
But the neighbors don't. I don't think you have any objection to the sewer alarm and DPW, and I don't think the Holbrook Builders is proposing any construction right now. So I'm not sure what the neighbors would weigh in on.
I think if the neighbors would want to know the wetland status on the property, I think that, and I feel like the wetland status on 41 Main Street is not necessarily tied to the Clarendon Sewer project. It needs to be figured out separately. If 41 has a question with the delineation, that's a separate issue from us approving this project.
Obviously, we respectfully disagree with you. It's the question of whether there's a wetland resource area there or not is part of what this request for determination is asking you to determine. So if you determine that there is a wetland resource area there where we believe there is none, even if you say we're not determining the boundaries, but you determine that there is a wetland resource area there, we will have no choice other than to contest it, and we will do everything that we can to contest it, and that will probably mean tying up the sewer project.
This is Chris for the commission. Do we have interest in getting our own wetland consultant to look at the project?
Well, I mean, since that particular lot is not being developed right now, I'm sure that adds anything to this except delay and money.
And when you mean that you will contest it, I believe the RDA, that means you will appeal the determination, right? That is what you're planning to do.
We would have no choice other than to do that, and since it's a request for determination only under the bylaw, it's not an appeal to DEP, it's an appeal to Superior Court. And that's the only place that has jurisdiction to appeal it. Just for what it's worth, a little extra nuance as the member noted, there's nothing actually proposed right now by Hollowbrook for construction on the site. There is an intention to proceed with the project, but if you approve the determination in the way I have suggested, the wetland buffer zones from off-site would still be in effect on the property, and the project would have to be designed consistent with regulatory standards protecting those buffer zones.
Here's the one question. If we move forward and don't agree about the line, is that possible?
Are you saying, Chris?
For us to agree to have a negative determination, but not agree about the line. It's part of it.
I think that's what my recommendation was, to issue the positive 2B, which means the boundaries are not confirmed by this determination.
Okay, perfect.
Mary, did the town council have?
Town council's here.
Maybe it would be good to get an
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure,
opinion from town council.
sure. So, I've been in talks with my brother council here, and it sounds to me like there's a willingness to kind of leave the definitive delineation for another day, right? For when Hollowbrook comes back with whatever filing they may want for their project in the future.
Respectfully, Alex, that's not the case. If there's a determination now that there is a There's an IBW in that application.
We get to that.
Okay.
So if we can get a determination with language that says that definitively that the commission is not approving any delineations of IVW or associated buffer zone, then that would get an acceptable permit, right?
No, I disagree, because that's still a finding that there's some resource, some IBW there. You're just not determining where the boundary is, and that doesn't work. That's, in order for the project to proceed, if they determine there's a resource area there, they're then making a decision that although the work is within the buffer zone, or potentially not quite in the buffer zone, it's not gonna cause an adverse effect on the IBW, so the DPW sewer project can go forward, but it would be a binding determination that there's an IBW present on this property, and that's exactly what we have to oppose. So we don't wanna be put in the position of having a binding decision that there's an IBW present there. So if you issue this and we don't challenge it, we would be bound by a determination that there is in fact some resource area there that we disagree that there is. And then the fight would be over where's the boundary, but we disagree that there's a regulated resource area there in the first place.
Except, I believe in the 2007 or 2006, there was a different actually isolated wetland that was identified, which is on the property, and I don't know that you guys have looked at that one.
But in fact, we have, and so if you can point that out, so that area still exists and it's untouched.
Right, it's untouched and it would be on the property and it would be considered wetland on the property, right?
That would be, we don't have any problem with that remaining as an area that would be, considered in the future as a tiny IDW. But a large one that's in the front that was created because of beginning construction to build the parking lot. That can't be something that we agree to.
I guess I don't understand why we can't issue a negative with comments. With narrative.
Yeah, I think we
Well,
could,
why-
that's what I was trying to
So we were
suggest.
trying to do that early on, but I don't know really where all of this went. Except if they decide to develop the rest of the property, then they'll have to come with a filing that's separate.
Yeah.
So it's one project and a separate project, so we're dealing with the pump station, can't we just
Deal with the pump station.
do what our commission usually does?
Yeah, and I think that the goal, at least what I understand from Hollybrook's perspective, is to end up with a negative determination issued that does not result in a binding delineation of IVW or associated buffer zone. So I think the question is, can we add language in a narrative that says that the commission is not
So we just
approving.
need some language.
sure we can work out.
Somebody can work out some language.
Well, we already heard that's
The
not
lawyers.
acceptable, that solution is not acceptable.
I think that was one of the solutions he proposed.
Right, you want to,
The solution I proposed is to have a written narrative that explicitly says there is no IBW, although there's buffer zone shown on the plan. So what you're suggesting is something that's not really acceptable, which is to say, yes, there's a resource area there, but we're not determining where it is exactly or where its buffer zone is. We'll leave that to another day. But that would be a binding determination that there's actually a resource area.
No, I was suggesting
And that's
that's-
and that's a problem.
I was suggesting we say there's not a resource area.
If you can say that there's not a resource area there, then that would be great. That would be a binding decision. We would accept that.
Well, but then. Sorry, Alex, but that then handcuffs the commission in any future filing, if we've already made a determination now that there is no resource area there, right? That's the issue with that part.
Yeah.
So what's the problem with just removing that wetland line, because that seems to satisfy Hollybrook folks. And we're not making any determination of whether there is a resource area there or not. That's to be determined in the future.
To your point, yeah, I mean, if you're comfortable issuing the negative determination that says you're not making any definitive determinations, then I don't see why the buffer zone line couldn't be revoked.
Is there a buffer zone there or not? I think.
Yeah, but we're not
Doesn't
making that
matter.
determination now. I mean, that's not, that's not what we
Right.
wanna decide now. That's some future thing, and when the DPW fixes the culvert, maybe there'll be less water on the site. I don't know. Whatever the conditions are, climate change, whoever, there'll be some different conditions in the future than there are even right now. And with the pumps, after the pump station goes in, some different conditions there. Also, so I think the Holbrook folks just want that line removed. Is there any negative to doing that? No, because it seems to preserve the commission's rights to protect wetlands in the future. It allows the DPW to continue their work and allows the Hollowbrooks to then, do a wetland analysis in the future for whatever project they want to build at that time. So is there anyone who objects to that type of solution? Is there any negative? I don't know. Maybe Ty and Bond wants to weigh in.
They're keeping quiet.
Okay.
I mean, from a legal perspective, I agree with you. I don't see a downside to it. I think you're just preserving everyone's rights for the future.
For whatever happens in the future.
Yeah, and that's my whole thing, is just preserve our rights to look at that
I'm comfortable with that.
I think that sounds like Mary's recommendation number 1, which has a negative determination 3, work in the buffer zone will not alter resource area, but on positive 2, the boundaries are not confirmed by this filing.
The narrative would be written up by town council or how would?
Well, I think what's being proposed is to actually remove the buffer from the plan.
Then there was no real narrative.
So
that
there
needs
needs
to
to
be.
be-
New plan, you're saying submit a new plan,
The
With the
time
buffer
bond
line.
would just take out the buffers, yeah.
right?
And then commissions, as you pointed out, we didn't confirm whether there's a buffer there or. But
Yeah, I think you have to think of it a few different ways. I mean, Ty and Bond found wetland on the site and I looked at it myself and found that it was wetland, okay? So the wetland has since been filled and maybe you just want to say, okay, he's putting the topsoil back after 18 years or whatever it's been. And you can look at it that way, that's fine, but just keep that in perspective, after 2 or 3 years, 5, 6 years, whenever it gets around to building its development. What the parcel will look like, the wetland will look like at that point, we don't know.
Right, so we can't really determine now. Do you have a plan?
So the boundaries are not confirmed by this filing or this determination.
Right.
Just need to ask Ty and Bond how they feel about removing the perimeter hearing for determination.
Ty and Bond has already said that I'll let them speak for themselves, but they have said that they were not comfortable doing that as part of the filing because of their scientific reason.
Okay, so that's good to know, because now we're stuck in the problem, right?
So we
yeah,
have to,
yeah,
we have
if we
to
can.
This is,
specify in
the board has to decide how important it is for you to have that information on the plan or to consider it. Or to consider the alternative view that this is a created wetland that occurred over time. That it wasn't, so the board has to really decide that, and I think it's up to the board to decide it now or later, but we do have to approve the determination tonight, I think.
Well, in terms of. I would not be particularly comfortable, assuming that everything Goddard has put in their letter is actually true without. I think this is complicated enough that, down the road, we would want to hire a consultant to look at the soils again, maybe actually do a real test pit. I have questions about where is the groundwater I don't think that was addressed at all, Goddard. I don't really know how important the drainage from that storm drain is to the hydrology of the site. Is a lot of water going down there just a little bit. Is there, was it excavated to the point that, you know, you hit groundwater and is the wetland there primarily supported by groundwater or by the runoff, as Goddard suggests? We don't have enough information.
And
So
groundwater
I would-
levels have been
you know-
rising over the, I mean, it may not have been a wetland 20 years ago, but groundwater levels have been rising over the past few years. They could change.
You know, I wouldn't want our determination to validate everything that Goddard has in.
But we're not really, because we're not making a wetland determination, right? That's the whole reason for doing the RDA. We don't wanna get involved with that right now because why put a lot of time, effort and blood, sweat and tears into something that doesn't matter because nothing's being developed right now on that process. So why do we care? It's moot. But with the RDA, do we actually?
So like, it's not moot, and, you know, our wetland bylaw requires that all the wetlands be shown on the plans, okay? And that's why the buffer zone is on there. So for us to say, oh, it doesn't matter if it's on there or not, we're saying, well, it doesn't matter if we're applying our bylaw. Do you see what I'm saying?
Well, we're not making a definitive determination.
Well, right, we're not, see,
yeah.
the Holbrook is asking us to take the line off the plan. And that, to me, that would be not being true to reviewing the area. Like, you know, when they initially filed the NOI way back, I looked at it and said, oh, well, they didn't notice that wetland and they didn't notice that wetland that were done for the Governor's Landing project. And I forwarded that to them and they added them to the plans. So in this case, we're looking at a wetland that we're not sure about. Okay, maybe it needs further evaluation, but we're just dropping it just, you know, well, we do have a lawsuit on our hands, but we're dropping it for that reason. So just think about the context of the bylaw and why we draw wetland lines on the plans. That's, I think.
Yeah, but normally that's done because someone has got an immediate project that they want to develop on the property. Just to make a wetland determination for something that they may develop 5 years from now, 10
That's
years, 20 years, maybe never, who knows, maybe he sells it.
Yeah, so this wetland determination is for the pump station, which is, I believe, the gravel from, yeah, so it's looking at a specific piece of the property that the town took by eminent domain. So, yeah, I agree, it's not meant to look at the future development of the property, only the pump station.
So we could handle it with a negative with a narrative.
Except that's not gonna be acceptable. So, I mean, we understand, right?
In his presentation, he offered us two options.
No, just, we already spoke about this, and the two councils.
Or do a
Okay.
narrative. That would be acceptable to him.
Well, it sounds like the only acceptable narrative would be if he says there's not an IBW there, which it sounds like we're not going to do anything to do, so. Maybe the easier thing is just to
There's
remove
another
lots from the
site.
plan.
On the pump station portion. Can't that be separated out?
Oh,
Does
can
it
we
make
just
the
say
site-
that?
Yeah, just make a smaller plan.
The site is this square with the pump station on it. I mean, they wanna move ahead with their project, we have to,
Right, they do, they need to move.
we
on.
don't wanna abandon our wetlands. Lord knows enough of them have been abandoned.
I'm comfortable.
Removing the line for that. For the pump station. I understand. The hesitancy,
Mhm.
but I'm comfortable with that, knowing that in the future. We can look at this in much greater detail.
Yeah, the only comment needs to be that we have not made a determination of the wetland
Right.
resources on any of the,
Because-
the other part of 41.
Right, and certainly we know that the work is not impacting wetland resources. We know that for sure.
Agree to take those lines off and then put the statement that the boundaries are not confirmed by this determination. Or you say nothing is confirmed.
Mary, you seem to have some. Right.
I'm not the board, you guys know.
That doesn't matter, that's why you're.
Make a motion to appoint Mary to the commission. Rest of this meeting.
I mean, are we giving up any right for the future if we just do that? I mean,
In my opinion, no, not from a legal perspective.
Okay.
So let's see.
We can still look at the wetlands at the time.
Absolutely, we have to, there's no other choice, because they'll put a new filing in and we have to go through the normal process. Then we would go through.
So this section of town, of land that the town took by eminent domain is now the town's property. It's not theirs.
It's an easement.
It's an easement, so they still own the property, but we've taken, okay, so.
I know, just a comment for Mr. Wambach that. You know, I think the commission, I know if you look at our setbacks and say, oh, 75 feet off the wetland, I think the board would be very open to like creating the wetland somewhere else on the property. It's already been, you know, impacted, and you know, not having a 75-foot buffer, you know, maybe a smaller buffer. So just keep that in mind for future.
It's a good option, Mary, of having them think of doing, creating a wetland somewhere else.
So could we recap what's being proposed and then ask 41 Milford if that's acceptable? I'm not entirely sure about where we've landed here.
Just want to remove I think the consensus is, Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, is we just remove that wetland line from the plan.
Yeah, the
the
buffer.
buffer line from the plan, then everyone's, yeah, and everyone should be happy. But we still haven't heard from Pine Bond. I mean, do we need to get do we have to have another third party come in and draw a plan? I don't know, but what's is there any acts Bill wants to say?
Yeah, so there's absolutely no doubt that the existence of the wetland is disputed, right?
Right.
And regardless of however that dispute plays out, it has absolutely no impact on this project. So it seems to me that you just go down line off, because the dispute remains to be resolved, but it doesn't have to be resolved for the purposes of the project. Okay.
But it needs to be resolved later on for the DPW's project. And
And I
owner.
And I think maybe instead of asking Time Bond to take the line off the plan, I think it would be more appropriate for, say, the commission. You know, determine this in a narrative. I think that would be more appropriate than asking them to take the line off the plan. Yes, that's,
Yeah, that's,
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that keeps everybody happy. We haven't heard from them.
So is that our consensus? To ask Time Bond to look at what the line is and consider possibly taking it off.
We're gonna take it.
no, so what we'll do, Chris, is we'll just make a comment about it in our narrative. We'll say, we'll note that the line is on the plans that was offered by Time Bond, and we're not gonna ask them to take it off. But we'll just say the commission is not gonna tie that to the project or whatever. We'll put some wording.
Not endorsing line at this time. Okay.
See, that's, to me, what I hear is something that the Hollowbrook team is not gonna be happy with, right? Or you are gonna be happy with that. Now this is what I'm trying to understand from you.
The nuance of the language is gonna be very important. The way it's written leads to a conclusion that you're determining there is a resource area there, but you're not determining boundaries to it. That's a problem.
We think we're saying that we're not going to address the issue of the wetland in this file.
Or better stated is to say, we're not making a determination of whether there is
Or is not.
anything on that parcel. And that should hopefully make.
Thank you.
I think if you're explicitly referencing the buffer zone line. I don't see what the issue.
Okay,
So is it just to speed up Mary's work, is it okay for the two councils to come up with a paragraph that makes them, because it's gonna go back and forth between you
Yeah,
folks,
yeah,
right?
we can certainly work on it.
Then Mary will toss that in, you know, with whatever else she needs to do, and then that makes everyone, preserves everyone's rights, everyone's happy, and goes forward.
I think that'll be the quickest.
Yeah, because if Mary writes something and has to go to two different attorneys, they have to look at it, just they get on a.
Yeah,
We'll go out to lunch sometime and hash it out
Yeah.
on something, it makes it a lot faster.
And then we should probably put that on our agenda again, discuss what was determined by both parties.
So I think we have to approve it tonight, though, otherwise the work can't go on, right? Is that this, because we've already made they've already closed out we have to make a determination tonight, right? Isn't that the truth?
yeah, so it's work in. Well, I guess only the work in buffer zone. Could proceed.
I can comment on that. The contractor is outside of the buffer zone right now. The contractor also is not going to be doing any work next week. They are taking the week off. But as for the foreseeable future, they will be outside of the buffer zone.
Okay, so the next meeting would be fine, we could review the letter then, and vote on it then, correct?
And how many
Yeah.
days do we have to issue whatever we issue after we close?
21,
So we have 21 days after we close.
Yep.
So that's 21 days and a week.
Well, why can't we just close the meeting now, because if we have 21 days to issue it, please vote.
So I guess you guys, it sounds like what I understand is you guys wanted to see what they come up with, so you can vote on it.
Right?
That's what I would.
So I would say you need to keep the hearing open until you.
And we could probably just have a draft determination
Yeah.
ready for the next meeting.
Right.
Yeah, I would like to see the draft before. I vote.
And then they'll have 21 days. Okay.
So if we continue it to our next meeting, it will be the 9th at 7:10. And then we can go over what the wording is for this letter. So do a motion from the board to continue this hearing to our next
So moved.
meeting.
Second,
All in favor, Chris, I.
Eleanor.
Sandy, I.
Shannon, I.
Marcella, I.
That's unanimous vote of the commission. So this will continue until July 9th at 7:10.
Good, thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you.
We'll work hard to.
You.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate everyone's work on this. Okay, so
Thank you.
we also have a certificate of compliance for Claflin Farm Road, number 769, 787, and 780.
Chris, I have, this came up, it wasn't on the agenda, I did a site visit today with Alec at 170 West River. And he's here, so I should address his issues right now.
Yes, let's do that. Okay, so 170 West River.
What are the issues?
Well, last time we voted to write him a letter. And I never got the letter done, but we had a great site visit today.
Oh, the one that's in the edge of the conservation.
Oh,
district.
Yeah, so spatial restriction, yeah. Yeah, so. Let me share my screen. Okay. All right, so Alec and I had a great talk. So the wood, he was not aware that he was not allowed to store that in the conservation restriction, so he's gonna move that right out of the conservation restriction area. And then there are a few questions that came up during our site visit. So he is putting a pool in, and he does intend to put a fence around the pool, and he intends to put the fence pretty much right on the property line / the conservation restriction line. Okay, so one issue with that is when you put a fence in, you want to put it in a flat area, etc. And so the conservation land, you can probably see there's like a post right here in the middle, you can't really see. But the line runs pretty much right down to the bottom of the picture and behind me. As you can see, there's a little rise in the land, it goes up maybe 3 or 4 feet. And so your intent is to kind of excavate to make it level. And then that's gonna leave like a,
Slice in the.
yeah, just kind of take a slice out of it. So it's gonna leave, you know, like a cliff or whatever, at the edge, a bank, yes, a bank. And we just wanted to confirm, and so the fence will go right at the edge of the conservation restriction, but he will have to it may end up altering some of the conservation restriction land by, you know, grading that area out, so we just.
So how are you gonna stabilize the area you grade out? Just gonna cut it out? What's gonna hold it down there?
From what I was told, I'm not an engineer, so they're just gonna flatten out the earth and everything around it. Everything where the area in question is pretty much one grade, except for that area. So I was just gonna add whatever they push around on our side to make it flat, because it pretty much is flat, the whole area.
So you're gonna build it up on your side, or are you gonna?
No, that slice that's gonna cut
You
through, it's flat.
Right,
It's just gonna go
right,
straight through.
yeah. So I guess that potentially you could put in a little retaining wall, or you could just leave it as earth, and it's just gonna be. Yeah,
Just a road,
it will
it's
potentially.
like sandy there.
Yeah, I think it is
So
sandy.
it'll just rivet a road, come down into a spool.
Yeah.
It's gonna want something.
Yeah. How much you talking, 2 feet, 3 feet, what's this size? 2 feet.
You may have to move your.
Little mini. It's not gonna go anywhere except into land. It's not gonna,
You're
and
gonna have a fence there and your pool and 2 feet of sand sliding down into your pool.
Is that our concern?
Well, that's conservation land going into this.
Okay, that's what I'm saying, but if that. So you could do that by just seeding or whatever.
Yes, I just asked, what's the
Oh, I thought you were
plan?
talking about you're going to do something with the cut.
Well, you know, I don't know if he's gonna cut 2 feet and smooth it out.
Well, what happened to?
We don't have a plan, so we don't know. We don't have anything to look at.
I can show
like
you
that.
that plan. I do have a plan.
Oh, good.
Let's see if I can find the plan. Okay, so this is kind of, the area in question is right in here. The conservation restriction runs like that. Pool's gonna be over here. So this is gonna be patio area,
pavers.
pavers. And so the fence is gonna go around here, around here, around here, and then eventually to the house. I believe there's another better close-up view of the plan, which does not show
So how much
CRs
of,
as much.
how much of the conservation restriction did he clear?
Zero.
Well, a little bit.
That's trees, right?
A few
I will
trees.
retract that statement. 2 trees were cut down. And it was a language barrier, because I told them to leave these 2 trees, and when I came back out, they were gone.
Yeah, so there
So-
were some, it's not a ton, but there's some extra trees removed at the edge, and we did, when we were looking at it today, I discovered all these little green guys in here, they're big tooth aspen seedlings. So I, you know, maybe suggest, I think we talked about maybe planting 1 or 2 trees as kind of replacement, but just letting these guys go. And see what comes in naturally as well. So, yeah, I think. Yeah, the question, so that, yeah, this was just a, you know, board wants to see. I mean, you may end up having to go a little bit into the CR to smooth it out. I mean, that's as an option, or to just cut it straight and leave it as it is.
I have a question. Will the roots of the trees be grubbed out?
Yes, and that is another, and I don't, I think I have a picture of that area. Maybe not. Yes, it's kind of in here. So 3 of these trees are were in his property area, and he would like to grub those stumps out. And I asked him to, and these ones are in the CR and back here, I asked him to, if possible, leave those. Of course, when you're grubbing tree stumps out and the roots are all entwined, you may end up with more than you wanted. But
And I was and just for situational awareness, when I first asked for permission taking down these trees, there's about 6 to 10 trees in question that I got permission to cut down. I only cut down 3 in total. So if I was I'm trying to ask for the trade-off, those 2 back trees that were cut as pretty much, not for pretty much, but for forgiveness on those 2 trees and leaving the other ones. And to Mary's point, those stumps that are in the area, except for the ones that are flat on grade, will not be touched. So the earth pretty much stays intact in that area.
And he is planning, there's a huge pile of, mulch chips, that is planning on using the landscaping, so that'll be out of there. So the wood's going out, this is going out, question of maybe planting 1 or 2. I think we had in the last meeting mentioned shrubs or trees like a dogwood or something as replacement, but then letting some of the natural vegetation come in, which is already there.
That sounds good to me. Do you have any other questions or comments from the board?
So plant 1 or 2 trees to your choosing, and you guys are okay with and the grading portion.
So we have a motion from the board to approve the trees that have been removed and the future planting of the vegetation mentioned.
Second.
So a voice vote, Chris, aye.
Oh, my.
Alan, I.
Okay.
Sandy, I.
Shannon, I.
Marcella, I.
Demands of the board. We appreciate you coming back to ask us.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Now, let's talk about the certificate of compliance.
Yes, so they haven't turned in their stuff yet, so we're still waiting on them.
Okay, so I'll just keep on. So, Mary, how about your administrator report?
One of my site visits was at 111 Glen Ave. And this was for a building permit application. They actually have done an extensive amount of work on this site. Thankfully, the person thought to put some silt fence up. I don't believe there's been any damage to the wetland, but the wetland is about 30 feet away back here. When I looked at the aerial imagery, it appears that it used to be like a lawn. This whole backyard area used to be lawn, and so I think what he's done is taken a few trees down, not a lot. He's put a bunch of gravel in there and a patio. And I decided that I think we'll just let that go. It's kind of improvements to his land, but he wants to put a garage in. So I told him, and the garage is gonna go kind of over here. He's gonna cut down, clear a bunch of trees. So he's either filing an administrative land disturbance permit for that, or a determination because he might be approximately at 100 feet for the garage area, so that's just the status with that. So they were definitely very workable. This is DPW project, Fisk Ave, they've got lovely tree protection and erosion controls. This is, every once in a while you get a call, I got a call from, an excavator said, you wanna come check my erosion controls? I'm like, sure, whatever. But it wasn't, I'll be right there, but it's a project that didn't really need permitting, he's over 100 feet from the wetland and it's smaller than an AMVP, but since he asked us, then sure.
Just out of nature.
It's enough.
Yeah, so he felt like he got his, anyway, that's great, I love it when people ask ahead of time.
Oh, good.
And 66 Taft Street, we had written them a letter asking them to either stabilize or install erosion controls, which they did. And I think that's it for my pictures. And a few other notes. Grace, I did talk with Grace Lamb. And she's planning on putting the fence in before the fall. And she expects to have more people on the property. So that's the plan of the fence.
Did you say what kind of fence is it, split rail or what?
I didn't ask.
I'm just curious,
I think probably like a split rail would be, that would be my guess is appropriate for the spot, but I don't know if it's gonna be that.
I was just curious.
45 Milford, which is the neighboring site to 41. They had put in an ANRAD, and we don't know what they're putting there yet, but I approved a building permit for the demo, so they're pulling the house down, but it's more than 100 feet from the wetlands, so it doesn't need.
They're taking the house down.
They're taking the house down for that, because they're gonna put something else.
Yeah, there we go, still.
We don't know what yet.
How old is the house?
I'm not sure, it's kind of like strikes me as like a, early 19, between 1900 and 1950, kind of not great shape.
It was 75 years, right?
Yeah, kind of trigger the demolition. Just curious.
Oh, yeah, I'm not actually sure. I don't quote me on the age of the house.
I can check the
Yeah, you can check. So,
assessor's records.
and I don't know if someone else approved, I mean, that might have already been approved by everyone.
So they haven't said what they're gonna do with it, but they're taking the house down and they don't want us to.
Would that land, would the work on that land be in the boundary? As a buffer zone for the wetland?
Yes, yeah, interestingly enough, so when I reviewed that project, I said there may,
Thanks.
I'm gonna show myself.
that there may be, but I believe that the isolated vegetated wetland is actually, it's pretty far away from 45, I think it's over 100. So.
We can only know.
So 75 years is the number for,
Triggers a demolition delay by law.
really, 75 years?
But,
Seeing that old,
pardon?
that doesn't seem that old to me.
That's how the bylaws are.
Why is that? What's the reason for that? Like asbestos or?
No, they drew a line in the sand saying anything older than 75 years may be of historic interest.
Oh, historic, okay, I missed that part, I didn't know really what.
I was just thinking about the model,
Yeah, I was
which
sleeping.
is 75 years old.
Well, a lot of homes,
Take it out.
they go out and they go, yeah, no, you can check that.
They used to say 50 years was an antique.
No, that's all, it's more curiosity.
Very, and 22 Eames, if you remember, that was a enforcement order that he's slowly coming into compliance. And he says he's gonna put his bounds in by the end of July. I went to the MSMP, which is kind of the Municipal Association of Conservation Professionals. I went to their annual meeting. Listened to talks. So for 154 West River, it was reported that the manure piles were removed. I don't know how strongly you guys feel about getting the site inspected or.
Where is one, who is that?
Well, it's Marie Dunell.
Oh. Horse farm,
Yeah, the horse farm.
oh yeah.
So I've asked her, I emailed her at least once saying, can we do a site visit to just verify? Just let it go, or there has been somebody actively complaining about that site.
Yeah, I would think if they.
Since there's been complaints, we should do an inspection.
Right, if they come back and ask about it, then we should.
Yeah, there were, that one person called, I think 3 times over the past year. Wondering
Sure.
why it's taking so long.
She's storing her, where's the manure being piled?
Well, it's within riverfront area,
Yeah,
to the West River, so I don't know what she's doing with it now. She said she moved it out.
right.
So, and that her intention for the future is to make a concrete holding area again, which. Yeah, don't know what's going on or where that's going.
Yeah. So she's been put, yeah. My daughter used to keep her horse down there. A couple years, 3 years or 4 years ago, so. Yeah, down there, yeah, she had her manure too close to the river then, and I told her she should do that, but she never did.
Okay, yeah, so it's
been-
it's kind of an ongoing issue,
Yeah.
right, so. Yeah, I can just reach out again.
Sure.
Ask for
I think
I just wanted
that one.
to know whether I should drop it or not.
Well,
That
I-
one, I think we should definitely follow up on that because.
Yeah.
The complaint, and we don't want to make it look like we're being preferential to selectmen.
Right. Yeah,
I know, we gotta go easy on her, because we're an appointed board.
Oh, God, please.
All of it's big time for all of it.
All end up in court.
yes,
They-
Sued
Maybe
already.
they'll kick us off the board.
First time I've ever been
Yeah.
sued.
So, and I also this week attended a culvert assessment wrap-up meeting as did Bill.
Do we have a report we can review?
There's a report and actually all of the culverts are listed and all this data is on the site.
Yeah, did you get a copy of the report?
Yeah, I did, yeah, and yeah.
So is there a
it's-
PDF?
I have hard copies there, it was in draft form,
Yeah, I don't think they've issued the final, so.
but they intend to do that by June 30, because that's when.
They checked all the culverts in town
A lot of,
Virtually all of them.
virtually.
I mean,
There's
they
one
think-
on South Street they couldn't get to because it was behind a gate. And there was one more, there was some, I guess, there was one other that was an issue, I think it completely it was completely. There was
That's a
silt
big
on
job.
both sides of it, so they couldn't see into it or look at School Street.
That's a big job.
Yeah, they were out, there's 4, 6 maybe.
Yeah, I
There's a
saw that
local
one.
Blackstone watershed, Pete volunteers were helping. They did a phenomenal job. They did a good job, but like I said, there's an online database that has all of this information.
And it's on our website,
No, it's a state site.
okay.
Yeah, I'll be right on it.
Yeah, well, I actually think it's send us a link to that. That would-
Yeah, when the report's finalized, I'll distribute it.
Just one- Curious what they said about the Warren Brook culverts.
yeah, and they told us the 3 top ones for fixing. One was on Piccadilly. And then one was on Grove, not sure which one that is on Grove.
Not,
And then one was on Fowler,
Yeah, follow.
but not the one on, but
Yeah,
not
down,
on the, what would be the west side of Mechanic.
right,
This
it's
one.
that Box Mill sluice that comes behind my house.
Yeah, it runs out.
Yeah,
and
and it
stuff.
goes under there, yeah, that's all falling apart.
And that was one
The
of the top
sluice is
ones.
practically filled in.
yeah, so interestingly enough, the part of the project was coming up with conceptual cost estimates.
Oh, I-
So the first one they showed us was $1.7 million. 50
Yeah.
foot,
Where's Henry Corio?
Oh, well, that was because that was the Piccadilly one, and the Piccadilly one, I looked at that, and it's because it goes.
it's 100 feet, yeah.
It's 100 feet long because the property owner has their nice lawn and then it outlets into the wetland. Like it goes completely under the road and the tree. So that's a tough one.
Yeah, yeah, so we determined that most of it's private, the part under the road is public. Actually, I was gonna look to see if there was an easement. On the property, but. Probably not.
Probably not.
I need to check.
Mary, anything else for your report?
Well, and that our intern Owen has started and for the land stewardship and the land stewardship will probably meet next week to figure out more jobs for him.
I got some stuff for you.
Great. And that's it for me.
Thank you. How about administrative report? We have meeting minutes.
Yes.
and time-
Sorry, can everyone hear me all right?
Yeah.
Awesome. So we have the June 11th meeting minutes to approve. Did everyone get a chance to read those?
Yeah.
And are there any comments or corrections?
Do a motion to approve June 11th minutes.
I'll move.
Have a second.
Second.
Let's do all in favor of voice vote. Chris, aye.
Okay, Alan, I. That's fine.
Sandy, I.
Shannon, I.
Marcella, I.
That's a unanimous vote of the members present.
And then let me try to share my screen. Okay, so we have some expense vouchers that I've separated out because the American Patch one, we're still waiting on confirmation that Kenny has the right stuff. So I believe this was already voted on at a previous meeting, but just showing that. We
Need a
have,
motion to pay the bills?
yes, but I believe that we already had a motion for the American Patch one. But we could do it again, perhaps. But yeah, there's also a legal ad, Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commissions annual fee, and an invoice from Koopmans for $150.
Excellent. So do a motion to pay our bills.
I'll move. Second.
Okay, let's do a voice vote. Chris, aye.
Aye.
Alan, I.
Sandy, I.
Shannon, I.
Mike, I.
Marcella, I.
That's a unanimous vote. Thank you, Lauren, for doing the bills.
We do have a balance sheet as well. There we go. Oops, sorry, this is actually as of yesterday, not the 11th. And just as a reminder, the fiscal year ends on Monday. All right.
So,
that's all for me.
Hey, we need to get them in soon.
Oh, for the, okay, right.
It's just.
So Lauren, a bunch of people have handed in the receipts right now that we can pay the next few days. If the board is willing to approve them, let's see how much we've got. A couple small items from Koopmans, looks like about $15 worth. Plus $150 from Koopmans for nails.
I think we just did that.
You just did that, okay. And then $225 for a tree uprooter.
Where you got your ruler?
Yeah.
Yes.
Boy. I have a demo on that.
And then, oh, pizza trail markers for $450. That's it. pretty much.
So
So these are additional expenses that Lauren will make a new voucher for and will pay tomorrow.
So, but
Before, yeah, we have to pay tomorrow because
Yeah.
I'll take back, I'll take stuff for the first 2 weeks, right? Sooner.
Right.
Do a
Motion to
second.
pay the bills.
The second. Okay,
I'll move.
Chris, aye.
Shannon, I.
Alan, I.
Aye.
Sandy, I.
Just voted that on approval for 41.
I.
unanimous vote of the commission. Thank you.
Oh, I go aye except for the one that's for me.
Okay,
You abstain.
I'm thinking that one.
Yeah, I guess I should abstain from the one I'm getting reimbursed for too.
That's a majority vote of the commission.
I think it should just be, there's a certificate of compliance, 2 for 0 for LVP.
Actually,
Four things, four signature.
better check with Marcel. I'm not sure, maybe we paid for the forestry suppliers and we're getting reimbursed for it. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Yes, that's a reimbursement.
Okay, reimburse to Marcella. Same with the, but not with the.
Pull out with the thousand.
Okay. No, I'll sign this blank. Yeah, don't, you don't have to sign, if there's a determination there, it shouldn't be. Yes.
We sign everything that.
I signed it.
That's okay.
That's it, sign, that's
There's
nice.
no date on it.
Well, when you're going fast for next.
Yeah.
Okay, we have open space.
I just wish there were more. There's really, I did get a letter yesterday from the title attorney. Only working on confirming there's no access over the railroad tracks to the Lake Wildwood land. Haven't had a chance to read it, but I expected to say there was no recorded easement over the railroad tracks, because that's been the case for the property they finished.
Okay, how about land?
Oh, yes,
search?
I'm sorry, SPT walked, walked the Monty property, and I guess the feedback from SVT is, can't we buy more? So we're gonna, approach the owners about perhaps more than 35 acres.
What property?
It's off Inmo. It's 107 acres, we're trying to preserve all of it, 65 acres, and it's 35 acres.
So that backs up to.
That-
Warrenbrook.
That backs up to the Forest Heights land.
Okay, that one backs up to the Warrenbrook. property.
Yeah, eventually, yes. And then it's actually the northern boundary is a 30-acre owner unknown property, which I believe someday we'll be able to preserve as open space.
Is that water the pipe?
Almost. The next piece of property to that is an economic piece of property that actually is on both sides of.
Oh. I just.
Good job.
Yeah.
Job you.
Okay.
No.
That's it, thanks.
Okay, how about land stewardship?
I think he just did that.
Oh,
No.
I don't think there's anything new. I mean, Mary mentioned might put Owen to work next week.
Okay, anything else?
Mary, anything new on?
I called David last week and he never.
You try again.
I need to try again. This always happens. Get a meeting, oh, I have to call.
So,
Mary, is Owen going to be available tomorrow to do the mowing? Looks like Scott is available.
Oh, yeah, that's great. Let's see if Owen replied.
Although I haven't checked my email since we started,
Why-
maybe new information.
I think, I mean, I told him to meet at town hall at 9, so he should be available for 10:30, so. Yeah, he may just not be on his email tonight, so. Yeah, let's go ahead with delivering the thing and I'll give him, we'll find something for him to do at 9 and then meet you guys there.
Yeah, it should be delivered to the trailhead at Whitney East.
Yes.
Okay.
okay, anything else?
Yes, I missed the last meeting and so I was contacted by Beaver Solutions. over on Southborough Road, they put in another dam that's flooding the boardwalk. You know, kind of in between the culvert and the main dam, you know, on the other side of the street. I don't know what side. Whatever, anyway, so, they've done it before. We pulled the dam out and they left it alone. I think we should just, you know, pull the dam out and see what happens.
Is that the piece that runs along Southborough Road and under Westborough Road?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so I'll mention that to John Johnson,
Okay.
because they pulled that out.
Yeah, I know, that's what I was saying, so, and it held up, like, they didn't remake it.
So
But that
it's
boardwalk-
flooding up the boardwalk.
Boardwalk
between
is flooded.
Southborough and Westborough Road.
Yes, yes. Thank you, yeah, I meant to send that along to everybody, I meant to do a lot of stuff that wasn't here, frankly, told them. So,
Do a motion to authorize pulling out the new beaver dam.
so moved.
Second.
Voice vote, Chris, I.
Cal and I.
Sandy, I.
Marcella, I.
It's a unanimous vote of the commission.
So do you have to issue something
No.
before we?
Oh,
Reach it.
probably, yeah, probably emergency cert.
Thank you.
When do you guys go, when does he want to do it?
Oh, no.
He was gonna do it.
Yeah, you can do
BPW has done that before.
Okay, you can do it within the next month, right? So,
Okay,
Near
Okay.
future.
I'll email to you.
Good job, everyone.
Thank you. You too.
Thank,
Yeah, good job, Chris.
thank you, Mary.
Hope I lost a little bit.
Yeah.
Putting off the problem till later.
And kick the bucket down the road.
Shut the recording off.
I'm gonna get.
Wait, I found one other thing. Did you guys just adjourn?
No,
I wasn't paying attention.
not yet, we wanted to.
You wanted to do. Okay, this is,
These things of Mike's, this last thing, you know.
yes.
This is gonna be an hour's talk. This is.
Well, it's 47 Mechanic Street.
Yep.
Planning there, it's a subdivision plan, that's for the planning board, I just wanna get it on, their hearing begins on the 9th of July. I would just like to have Mary write a letter. And maybe get some input from open space and maybe myself about the plan. Mary, I've looked at it, I have some thoughts. There's for example, there's a parcel, part of it is being subdivided off, which is I think that it's the backland. I think that could be increased a little bit, the size of that. Maybe to include the Tuna riverfront on both sides of the river. Looks like it only includes it on one side. But I'd be happy to, if people would let me, just review the draft.
I'll let you.
And if maybe we could get it to the planning board before the 9th. We don't meet again.
Right.
Before the planning board meeting starts.
so that's actually a large lot, frontage reduction special permit. Which means the lots themselves have to be bigger than the standard size, but it still may permit them to.
Oh, it won't be a problem because it was right now they're like 4 acres.
I think that's acres, an acre, it's 47 square feet. Yeah, so that'd be possible.
Which slot is that beside,
It's,
just before Robertson's?
yes.
Or they're doing some work on the house, right?
Yes.
Not in Hill.
Yeah.
48,000 square.
They wanna build another house there, talk.
So it's 42,
43.
42,
40,
5, 6,
yes.
43, 5, 6.
Yeah.
But for in here, in Upton, acre zoning is 40,000 square feet, 2 acres is 80,000 square feet.
Just to make math easy.
Yeah.
Math challenge.
Anyways, it's Woodshire, So they're gonna have to go before Heritage. Also got an old mill dam site.
It's the pond down there, the mill pond stuff. That,
Yeah, the pond's gone, but the mill dam is still there.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
not that Mary needs anything else to do.
Uh-huh.
We have any new filings for next meeting, so.
That was it, so.
Hey, that was
is
good.
that all?
Yeah,
It
that was
wasn't,
good.
didn't take an hour.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's usually very interesting. Motion to adjourn?
You have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I-
Aye.
Yeah.